Yes, hello, and welcome. Today we are going to begin going through the study guide, which is why I provided this study guide for you. Uh, you need to click on it, and then it'll pop up, and it will look like this. Okay? This is the beginning of your study guide, and we're going to go over this. And this will form the backbone of a lot of the material that we will later hold you responsible for testing. And, it's some pretty simple stuff. So let's talk about this is Unit 1, Prehistory and Ancient Man, and the art of that era. Now, if you've been keeping up on Canvas and you looked at all the pictures I sent you, those were some examples of prehistoric art. Art before the word prehistoric means before written history was compiled, and I'm going to sneeze, and you must forgive me. Okay, so let's begin with the introduction, shall we? This course is about many things. Mostly, however, it is about what makes human beings different from other creatures. The primary quality that separates mankind from his fellow life forms is his ability to take things and to make new things. In short, his ability to create. Over mankind's short march on this earth, man has fought with nature to control her and still fights, and that fight is going on, or at least to contain her to do his bidding. When man found that he could take time away from this life and death struggle for survival, he began to recreate himself through the arts, which is where we get the word recreation. You recreate yourself. That's why, once again, sports are considered an art form. And his study of himself, which is properly called the humanities. That term, humanities, will pop up again on your test. Humanities. Humanities are a series of subjects where man studies this guy, himself. Art, of course, is a humanity. History is a humanity. We'll talk about that in a minute. So what you have in your hand or on your screen there is called a study guide. It will be the central core of your coursework here in this class. Most of the notes that you will need will be developed from this document and others like it that will follow over the next 100. It says 187 days. I think it's somewhat less now. You will receive one, and if you can't lose this. It's you've downloaded it. I used to give out paper ones. I hear that the Boone County wants to go paperless. Okay. As well as notes and skeletal information, this study guide will also contain assignments and projects that you will complete as a requirement of this class. If the information is in the study guide, it's considered part of what is test worthy or material you can and will be held responsible for. If it is in the study guide and not covered in class, you're still considered responsible for it. To be honest, though, we pretty much go over everything. Yeah. This guide then will be used in partnership with your primary text, Adventures in the Human Spirit, which you don't have. Yeah, but don't worry about that. I mean, basically, that book, which is stacked back here in the back of my room, we only used it to look at pictures. I'll provide you with the pictures as well as other learning experiences to increase your understanding of arts and humanities, which is the proper name for this course, HAVPA. I'll have to look that up one day, because that knowledge will help each student to better understand why our society has developed as it has, why you may think as you do, and why others may hold certain core beliefs and values that cause them to think in a different manner. Let us start with some basic definitions, shall we? And this will be on your test. It'll ask you what subjects are considered humanities, and which ones are not. So let's begin with the not. Um, any most science courses and math courses are not humanities because they don't. The only science course that actually is a humanity is anatomy and physiology. Why? Because anatomy and physiology deals with how kinesiology, how the human body works and moves and things like that. If it deals with human beings, it's a humanity. So which ones are? Like I said, art is, history is, any language is. English, any foreign language. Psychology, now that is a science that is a humanity. Why? Sociology, which is a I won't say pseudoscience, that's rude. It's Sociology is the science of understanding what groups of people do. And so it would be considered an humanity because, yeah. But once again, and you'll receive any kind of history is PE is a humanity, yeah, because why? It deals with the human body. And so, yeah, as it says there, you can add almost infinitely to the list. History, English, or rather history, language, um, physical education, So the key concept is that there are courses that study the human condition. Yeah. Hopefully by now you've taken time to fill in some of those. And basically the question on your test will look like, which of the following is not a humanity? And it'll have 4 obvious ones that are humanities, and then one is definitely out of place, like geometry or something like that, or physics. So yeah, be easy. So, what is a good technical definition for art? Remember, we went over that a couple of times. Technical definition, 4 words. Art is expression on a medium. In other words, a person feels strongly about something and then uses some media to express that feeling. And that expression could be a painting, it could be a sculpture, it could be a song, it could be a poem, it could be an engraving, it could be um, any method of showing a way of expressing something. I remember that when I was in college, there was this one artist, performing artist, a pianist, who had concerts, and he would get up there on stage and he would perform. And for this one song, and I'm not lying, he would be sitting there and he would put his hands on the keys and take them off the keys. On the keys, off the keys. On the keys, off the keys. At varying intervals. And that was his art form. And like I said, you saw the candy. Nobody said the art had to be hard, and nobody said it had to be pretty. For example, I went to Washington, D.C. In Washington, D.C., they have 2 art museums in the Smithsonian. There's the Museum of American Art, and there's the Museum of Modern Art. And in the Museum of Modern Art, they're always bringing in new exhibits. And you got to remember, and by the way, all those exhibits the U.S. taxpayer pays for. And in the Museum of Modern Art, there were 2 that stuck up in my brain. In one of them, there was a poster on the wall. And as you began reading it down, the print got smaller and smaller, and you had to step closer and closer. And eventually, you looked down from that angle, and it's a bunch of things about protesting what the government has done or whatever, and you step so close, and then it tells you to look down, and you see that you are standing on the American flag. See, that is expression on a medium. Like I said, didn't have to be pretty. John Mapplethorpe, who was a famous photographer artist, which is another type of art. John Mapplethorpe had an exhibit, and I remember this was in the 1990s. The Mapplethorpe exhibit, very famous exhibit, made headlines when it came to Cincinnati, and it made headlines when it came to Cincinnati because the Mapplethorpe art exhibit, in one of the sections, the guy took photographs of small children going to the bathroom. Now, here's the thing about that. Of course, it raised controversy. I mean, Simon Lease, the sheriff of Hamilton County, Cincinnati, Hamilton County said, no way we're going to let this exhibit open. Can't do that. They went to court, and they found in court that, this is freedom of artistic expression, First Amendment. And so, yeah, the exhibit was allowed to be shown at the Cincinnati Museum of Art. Here's the ironic thing about it. That week or 2 weeks that the exhibit was open, the museum set records for attendance. But anyway, I was in the other exhibit in the Smithsonian, Washington, D.C., and one of the exhibits was a gallon glass jar, like you might have bought pickles in the old days. This glass jar had a metal lid, and in the lid was a crucifix, a cross. And in the crucifix was in a liquid. The liquid was greenish in color. I'll give you a hint as to what it was. The exhibit was called Piss Christ. Now, once again, expression on a medium. The artist was trying to say something. And, like I said, nobody said you had to like the art. Nobody said you had to like exactly what he said. The artist was expressing himself. Yeah. Forgive me. And so, yeah, that definition is easy to remember and will be on your first test. Ah, yes. Now we're on page 2. Pablo Picasso. There will be a question or two on Pablo Picasso. Pablo Picasso was the greatest artist of the 20th century. He is universally recognized as the greatest artist of the 20th century. Not just because of the quality of his art, and I don't know what necessarily makes modern art, what makes one art have great quality and another doesn't. I just know that he was recognized as the greatest artist of the 20th century. He was also very prolific. In other words, he put out lots of pieces of art. That's what prolific means. He made lots of art, not just paintings, but also sculptures, lithographs. Say, what's a lithograph? A lithograph is a print. It's something that can be reproduced. And in fact, he put out so many that if any major art museum worth the cost of admission, you'll find a Picasso in it somewhere. The Chicago Art Institute has a Picasso wing. And I'll show you some of them. One of his pieces is really kind of strange. He took a piece of cardboard, like you find a box, and he called it Devil, and it shows, crudely drawn devil, and he used the cardboard to pull out a little tiny part of the human anatomy, you know what I mean. And so, yeah, that was one I saw in Chicago. There is also one in the Cincinnati's Art Museum, a Picasso. But Picasso was born in Spain. He was Spanish. He spent most of his life in France, though, Paris actually, because when Picasso was growing up, if you want to be an artist, you went to Paris because that was where all the artists lived. You know, that's where the Impressionist movement had been. They lived actually. The artists lived in the red light district of Paris, the Moulin Rouge. Yeah, and so his most famous painting was Picasso's most famous painting was a painting called Guernica, Guernica. I'll spell it again. You know, if I'm spelling it, that means it's worth knowing. Guernica, Guernica. Guernica is the name of a small town in northern Spain, in the Basque region of Spain. The Basques are a group of people who live both in Spain and in France who have long wanted their independence from Spain and France. They haven't gotten it, of course. And during the Spanish Civil War of 1937, the democratic government was being overthrown by a guy named Generalissimo Francisco Franco and the fascists. And Franco invited some guy named Adolf Hitler to come and participate in the Civil War, to actually use the Spanish Civil War as a testing ground for all their new weapons. And Franco, Generalissimo Francisco Franco, he didn't like the Basque people, and so what he did to them, he gave Hitler the permission to test out his new Stuka dive bombers. The Germans had created this new dive bomber that dove at a very steep angle, accuracy, and all that, on the town of Guernica. Now, Guernica sets up in the mountains. It's surrounded by mountains. It's kind of an isolated place. And what the Germans did first, they bombed all the bridges going into and out of Guernica, so it cut off the town. And then they spent 4 hours strafing and bombing that town just to see how it worked. They totally, they tried to destroy the entire population. I'll have to post that picture for you tomorrow. I promise I will. I'll put it up. But yeah, it's called Guernica. It's Picasso's most famous painting. Anyway, back to the matter at hand. So when it says, what was Pablo Picasso's definition of art? One day, a reporter asked Picasso the question, what is art? And Picasso said, what is not? That means Picasso said everything is art. Anything created. I mean, this chair I'm sitting in is art. The fact that this tie that somebody created is an art form. Like I said the other day, if you go to the bathroom and there's a urinal or a commode, somebody designed that. It has function, but more than that, it has purpose, it has a design. It is art. What is art? What is not? Everything is art. The way a person speaks, the way he turns a phrase is art. And so, yeah. What is art? What is not? So, why is that definition so insightful? Because what I've been trying to preach to you the last few days is that you do art. You may not like to admit it, and the art world applies to you. And my purpose in this course is not to make you start going to art museums or to like art specifically, because you already do. You already like art of some kind. If you like the color blue, you like art, or any other color for that matter. That you like art. There's a part of your brain that is aesthetically inclined. Some people's parts of that brain is much bigger than others. I have the part that just knows to like stuff, not to create. I'm fascinated. Please let me, I'm going to try not to get sick. Okay. I mean, you take a look around my room, but I want you to look at the ceiling over there. Do you see that? A number of my students who are skilled in art have recreated classic works of art. Now, I want you to look back. You see that back there? That looks like a Japanese print. It was created by one of my students, Mina Rama, Japanese student. That is a very famous Japanese painting called The Wave. And up here, you see that on the wall. That is a recreation of Starry Night by one of my students who did that for me. Starry Night, you might remember, was a painting by Vincent van Gogh, not Vincent van Gogh. Vincent van Gogh, the Dutch painter, the guy who cut off his ear. And if you look back to the back, and it's harder to see it, that is a painting by another one of my students. It's called Horton Crosses the Alps, which is actually a takeoff on Francisco Goya's, Jacques Louis David. I'm sorry, Jacques Louis David's Napoleon Crosses the Alps. But yes, all right, I'm going to move you again, so don't get pushy or anything. And so, yes, and we're back. And so, yeah, the last question of the day is, do you participate in the arts? And yes. And we talked about this today or earlier today, yesterday. The real question is, how do you patronize the arts? Once again, you may see a question on your first test that asks you to name 10 ways that you patronize the arts, that you pay money for arts. Like I said, 10 is only the beginning. If you buy a movie ticket, if you buy a book, if you pay to download music, if you pay to buy musical instruments.
Heather Bloomer, please call the front office at extension 313.
So yeah, how do you you just need to know how you personally patronize the arts. There really shouldn't be any wrong answer unless you say, I buy bread. That might not be good. Or I buy rice, unless you said, I like to buy various foods to create Spanish cuisine or something like that. See, that would be patronizing the art as an art style. And so I think we'll stop there today, and we'll pick up with Roman numeral 2 tomorrow. And so, yeah, I have posted on your assignments page a very short Rick Steve video where he looks at cave paintings and where they came from. So yeah, I will talk to you tomorrow. Okay, and let me figure out how to put a stop to this. I know there's a way. Okay, let's get rid of that. Here's our board, and give me a moment. Come on, Horton, you can do this.